Alright, time to get fit with Murray, actually. It's actually one of my favorite sequences in the entire game. So the Murray games.
Was the Wiimote out at this point yet? Was the Wii out?
Yes.
Okay, Murray. We need Bob's help to recover the lost components, but he's in terrible condition. It's up to you to
honestly, yeah.
Alright, Bentley has managed to convince Murray to give Bob a fit, a get picked back into shape program.
Why is he wearing a cheese pizza on his waist?
The Murray is taking your training to the next level. Look around. We'll be using your standard training exercises: slippery slope, penguin popper, sumo slap, duck and cover, super sling, and whack-a-chump. Okay, so maybe they're not your standard exercises, but they are Murray approved, so let's get started.
Anyway,
that
you
would
start
explain a lot.
with the minigame you choose, and I'm gonna just go with the more painful, just so I can get this out of the way.
Good way to do it, honestly.
It's a balanced minigame where Penguin will constantly jump on you, and you have to, maintain the balance with, you guessed it, the 6 axis. Oh, okay. Just look at the controller and Bob's movement to showcase my increasing panic.
Got a question actually. Did Sucker Punch? You ever Sucker Punch's games on the PS3?
Yeah, the infamous games, Libs.
Did those ever include stuff
No.
where you have to use the 6-axis?
No, they were much more straightforward in how they implemented the controller usage.
Considering...
I really do have to wonder, was it an executive mandate that they include
Probably.
6-axis in this?
And I still question it because, again, this was the tail end of the console. Who cared anymore?
Okay. So, because let me ask, one, why Sly of all games to force the
Okay,
6-axis
that focus I
stuff
can
on?
understand. For the time being, let me explain quickly. This is very easy, just simple button mashing to represent, a struggle in a sumo fight. Here's the thing, Jova. Sly, even starting with the first game, but more so with the second and third, Sly has always managed to showcase so many different type of gameplay styles, kind of like, say, Action 52, So implementing something with the 6-axis to showcase what the console can do is an interesting thought process. And remember, the game has been in development for a couple of years, despite being released in 2013. So I get the idea that the 6-axis stuff was mandated early on, and they could not shake it out even for the finishing release. I will tell this, it's not as frustrating still, like I mentioned in a couple other games, like, say, Heavenly Sword, but it's still kind of painful. Yes, Shira?
Considering that last minigame being like something you'd see in Crash Bash, the stock sound effect is very appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It very much is. But yeah, that's again the thing though, Tia, like you said. So even if this was sort of Sly's thing, Sony had not really been paying that big a mind to Sly. Again, keep in mind, this was the first new Sly game in nearly a decade. And it was at the tail end of it. Like, of all the hills to die on, and again, at this point, the 6-axis was widely hated, so why would they be so intent? Like, it's one of those decisions that doesn't make sense either way, but it arguably makes even less sense if Sony were the ones negating this, mandating it.
I don't know, like, most of the creative decisions in this game feel straight. Okay, talking about the 6-axis stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That it may have been mandated by.
In that case, yeah, sure, most likely, yes.
Like, I get the idea Sandro just, decided which minigames to do, what the design want to do, and maybe at some occasion, and, maybe they had, an email request and Sony was like, if you're doing something, if you're doing these many different games, decide, where to put the 6-axis, but you had, a quota to fill.
No, in this case, I can guess that yes, too. I still disagree with your assumption that the reason there's a puzzle in Miracle Mask that uses the gyro on the 3DS is because Nintendo asked for it, because remember, Morocco Mask came out was published in Japan by Level 5 themselves. I mean, so
Yeah, that seems like something Level 5 themselves would want to do.
yeah.
I think it was only published by Nintendo in the West, right?
Yeah, only in the
It's a
West.
common
Only in the
thing.
West, yes.
It's a common thing with a couple of companies that self-publish in Japan but don't do in the West, do she, right?
No,
Yes.
that sounds like something, because go ahead.
Also, the Miracle Mask was a long time ago, and Mandy just said it because he didn't know better.
Standing on his head. The key
I mean, you know, to give Gyro credit, the Gyro of Nintendo worked way better than the 6-axis, so it's not as much a bugging thing.
and show them how real birds fly. When you hit enough targets, you win.
How did we get all these birds to comply?
Even without
Very
wings, I can still fly.
Very surprisingly managed to convince them. Also, don't worry, no real penguins were harming the making of this game. I don't even
I don't
remember
know, the footage says otherwise.
Cheer, you're just being deceived.
Someday I'm gonna have to show you guys the movie Roar.
What is that?
It's essentially a movie where a family who wanted to do good by, you know, giant cats like lions, tigers, cheetahs, and whatnot, well, they made a movie with 40 lions and tigers that were untrained.
Oh, like,
I think
I
you
know
did
this wasn't a
mention to
movie,
us in the
but Tiger
past.
King.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, yeah, something like that, except get this, they made the movie like that. Plenty of people got
Oh my
attacked on
God.
camera, and you want to know what's sick? They used a lot of that footage where people got attacked and then had to be rushed to the hospital as part of
Wow,
the
I don't
movie.
feel comfortable watching that movie, probably. Because, yeah,
Okay,
It's-
this
a lot of that is just actual real-life abuse on camera.
This last one is relatively simple. You just need to dodge obstacles that go in your way. But if I recall correctly, in this one the controls are reversed because you're facing like a different perspective, at least for left and right, if I recall correctly.
Never a fan of that.
But to be
way.
fair, you're still it's still manageable. It's just a matter of reflexes, as I said. But just completing with the 6 medals, it's not enough. Now we need a real montage.
There's one last test. You've got to put it all together.
Again, probably one of my favorite pieces in the entire game. Now we're gonna have a mix-up of all the minigames repeated in quick succession, while Peter McConnell gives us an 80s montage music. Please enjoy.
Basically, you will go for a lightning round of all these challenges.
If you manage to do this perfectly with no faults whatsoever, you also get a trophy.
Good luck when the 6-axis bit comes up.
To be fair, the 6-axis, surprisingly enough, is actually the least, problematic of his pieces. It's more of a fact that, again, it swings in rapid succession.
Now we're doing the Mario Party rapid fire multiplayer.
Basically,
Although
what
I
we're...
still panic because Jesus Christ.
You know what this reminds me of? This is sort of a bit like one of those compilations of those Rhythm Heaven games.
Yeah, and it is the same energy. Again, 80s montage, they had to bust out the electric guitar for this.
I was actually waiting for it.
Go for the gold, Tio. You know you want that perfect
No,
trophy.
I actually fuck up in this one. I still haven't managed to obtain the trophy properly, mostly because I haven't tried that much, but I probably should. Actually, I haven't explained it yet. The platinum in this game is surprisingly decent enough to obtain. Not super easy like the first 2 games, at least the PSP re-editions, and not dickish enough like the third one. It's sort of a middle ground. There we go. Yeah, again, the sumo minigame is the most easy to do. Sadly, again, this is actually one of the most difficult parts because you actually have to take the right
all in
reflex.
one try.
Even if the target flies away, it counts as actually missing. So it's best if you just fuck up normally. You can do it, Bob.
Yes.
Also, there's still the catharsis of actually beating the penguins up.
Yes.
I guess it's a minions effect actually done right because they're not too obnoxious, at least for the time being.
I'll be honest, yeah, I'm surprised that the balance game is the one that trips you up because I've talked to some friends and most people who play this game normally think that it's the balance one that trips them up the most in this.
Okay, that's the thing. It still does, but it's not like number one. That's what I mean. You have to also remember, Jova, that I'm someone who plays without the wireless controller, and using 6-axis movement, it makes things a bit difficult with that.
But don't worry, guys, it gets better because now things speed up as well.
Yeah,
Although they
because
haven't
Bob is
built the
getting.
Z-axis
That's the
back
thing.
yet.
Bob is getting better, so you have to.
Again, the problem. Again, it's a similar problem with games on the Wii that had tactile motion controls, like the Sinfonia Dawn of the New World. The reason a game like Flower worked is because it was made for the 6-axis from the ground up. It was a game that was made with a conscious choice by the developer to make the game revolve around it, and so the whole game was designed to cater to the strength of the feature.
There we go.
Beat the shit out of that Z-axis.
Even with a special single at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to say that this was probably the highlight of the entire chapter, because now instead we're about to get to Jova's favorite moment of it.
Okay, Murray, this is...
Okay,
yeah.
okay, we'll say this to sweeten the deal a bit. Murray's, internal Pinocchio come with the guru's, mini statue is a nice touch. Sadly, he cannot save us for what's about to come.
Pretty much. Like I said, this is probably what Murray is pissed about, given what's about to occur.
Yeah, I get the idea that the writer had no idea what have Murray to do instead of just standing there and do some stuff, which, if I had to give a faint suggestion, it's perfectly fine. This is we were talking about Ice Age in like the previous part. One problem that the movies tend to have is that for each new movie they had to come up with like a new story arc for character who had already like a gajillion done already, and they like Diego. So they decided to do one with Murray. Well, okay, fine. What did you decide to do with it? Something that feels odd, to say the least.
Let me put it like this. With Bentley and Murray, alongside Sly, it felt like they each had their character arcs across the course of the 3 games. Bentley was about becoming a more outgoing and more confident in himself guy, and Murray was one who transitioned from being just the fat guy to being the muscle to eventually being the heart of the group. Here, their arcs are pretty much concluded in this one game, and
and even in this very chapter, Murray's arc is supposedly the fact that he's overconfident about stuff, but he has to accept that he cannot do all kind of missions, even though this has never come up with before.
Yeah. Also, why would Murray be the one to climb the wall? This was never Murray's thing.
Okay, there were some hints already before that Murray feels a bit jealous on Bob's capacity, but again, it kind of feels a bit out of nowhere.
Not only that, this comes right after he was the one who instructed Bob to, regain his former glory. So if anything, shouldn't Murray be proud that Bob can do it now thanks to his training?
Also, the thing is so serious that not even food bribery works. But
Basically,
anyway, I have to explain this at least. Bob's special ability is that he can climb the walls. It's pretty much like God of War, except much more agile when you get down to it. But the movements and what you can do is pretty much the same. Bob has like a mini shockwave attack. You can clear obstacles. He can swing very fast in between places and can climb down also very fast if you press the right button. Again, straight up lifted from games like that. So it's not that, that bad as an ability. It just makes him the least interesting of the ancestor because it's not that much compared to the special abilities of the others. But that in itself does not make him a bad character to play. It's just, the least you care probably about.
He's kind of the boring one to the point where honestly, even Sly, who's the default, feels more interesting to play.
No, Bob. Yeah, your eyes. There you go. But yeah, go on, Drova.
But yeah, unfortunately, folks, in case you thought that, they're just doing that as a tongue-in-cheek way, No, they are serious. This is Murray's character arc that he has to overcome.
Again, the
fact that he
best thing
couldn't
about
climb a
the best
wall-
thing I can say is that it's solved quicker when you can actually think about it. But at that point, it just makes you wonder why they put it in the first place.
It's one of the things that exposes the writing for how shallow it is in this game compared to the previous ones. Like, again, if you didn't have a new good idea for the character arc of Murray and Bentley, just have them be Murray and Bentley and don't bother trying to fool us with these weak character arcs. And believe it or not, this might actually still be better than Bentley's character arc.
Okay, to be fair, I argue that among the two, Bentley is the one that actually manages to come out of it, the better in that kind of sense. It's gonna make more sense when it actually happens. But among the two, Murray is the one that just happens and you don't really care about it. Bentley is the one that feels the most egregious about it, but at the very least the character comes out relatively better out of it.
I think the major problem is whereas with Murray's that just feels like a pure asshole, Bentley feels not only like an asshole, but an asshole that literally did not need to happen. And that's not even talking about the source of it, but the fact that it really goes against his character, and once again, pretty much pretends like he didn't already have this character development in, the last 3 games. It is frustrating.
Repeated character arcs.
Yep, our favorite, Shiroi. Again, I question the writing mentality because half the time it does feel like they do respect the continuity from the previous games, but then they just have blatantly stupid stuff that thinks, did you not read it? And apparently there's just the one writer across the main board here, so what the hell happened?
Again, I just simply wager the fact that this writer either has no experience or was overconfident about the source material that he was having to work with. And the fact that we don't even know who this person is says also a lot. If I had any kind of field of reference, like say, oh, this is a person probably that's internal to Sons or who has worked on other games that they did, I probably would have something to compare this to. But with this, it's just like an actual mystery. I actually do wonder.
It's like I said, Sly Cooper is one of those series that, yes, it's good to have the gameplay be good, but Sly Cooper is one of those franchises that you play for the full package.
Shit.
Both good gameplay. God damn it.
The character, somebody who is was newish to this series when we started doing these. The thing I typically remember most is the characters. So.
And again, that's not to say that the gameplay is a slouch of this franchise.
Oh, no.
But this is a franchise that you remember more for the characters than you do the gameplay. So when you have something that messes with the characters and the story so much, we've got a problem, and may have been a dedicating factor to the fact that this game did not sell that well. And as a result, as far as the time of this recording is gone, is pretty much the death of the series.
Well, it still lives in some capacity. I got the thing that Jova was mentioning a couple of parts ago. I did check, and yes, I can confirm there are Sly Easter eggs in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Surprisingly enough, they are models straight up from Sly 2, because Bentley's model at the very least is from that one for that game.
Yeah.
I like that, by the way.
Wait, hold on.
It's awesome.
So it's confirmed that thing is in game and wasn't just a promotional thing.
It's literally just like extra models, but you can find that are based on some Easter eggs. Very easy. Sly, what we found was stuff like from Sly, Jack and Dexter, Uncharted, and Horizon Zero Dawn at the very least.
Let me put it this
from Sunset Overdrive 2, surprisingly.
Let me put it this way. Shiroi. Insomniac knows exactly what they're doing, and they're even throwing the shippers a bone.
Oh, sweet. Hey, I'm a serial shipper,
Also, yes, Rift Apart.
Wait.
I've only just got it today, and I haven't got to play it yet, so...
Also, Pedro, which shippers?
Rivet and Ratchet.
Oh, okay, because for a moment I thought you were referring to the Ratchet and Clank shippers.
Finally, my own clone. Now neither of us will be virgins.
Wait, are they the same person though?
No, well, to be, it's okay. I don't know much about it, the details, but essentially their respective equivalent in their own dimension.
Yes,
So-
yes.
Also
Rivet.
Sonic and Blaze, kind of.
Yes,
Yeah, please,
basically,
please.
yeah. Rivet is the alternate dimension Ratchet. It's now confirmed. Yes.
So of course he fell in love with her.
Basically, she's the Blaze to Ratchet Sonic. That's all you need to know.
Okay, that's the thing, though. It's okay. I don't know how the extent completely, but there's the fact that due to events that are explained in Tools of Destruction, it might be possible that she's native from Ratchet's own dimension.
It is
but
possible, but
It's complicated.
So
It's a
basically,
story reserved for that time, but don't worry, audience. I'm planning on eventually getting the Ratchet and Clank games after we're done with it at some point.
so basically, Jova, it's the inverse of the of Crash 4, whereas in that one the bad guys had a alternate version of themselves that they went
Pretty much.
This time it's the good guys.
Although it's more different timeline than dimensions in that case, it's complicated. But anyway,
yeah.
this is one mission later, and you're already having the payoff for Murray's characterization.
He's just a penguin herder now.
And it's in one of the typical cutscenes too. And again, if this were just a tongue-in-cheek thing, I'd be fine with this, you know? It would obviously be poking fun at that. No, they actually want you to take this seriously.
It's not even that, Joe, but like I said, the reason why my country particularly doesn't even care about problems like these is because it's literally a blink and you miss moment. One mission later and it's gone already. But again, my question subsists: why it's here in the first place, man? This doesn't add pathos, characterization,
So-
or drama in any capacity.
it's interesting to say that
Didn't get a
too.
little animated scene at the end about it.
Let me guess too.
No, we
Sorry.
do get it essentially with dialogue that says that the payoff is exactly what you think of. Murray learns the lesson, understands that he was overconfident about it. Also, high clockwork, and Bentley says that it was too harsh on him. The end. Then they go it together.
Oh,
I think Shuri was
Pedro?
asking, like, when does he even get an animated cutscene reflecting that to you?
At the end of a mission, kinda pretty much.
yes, Peter.
Okay, Taylor. Let me see if I understand correctly. So, if I understood correctly, your country is very lenient when it comes to tropes and stuff like that, and cliches, and overall, because mine is also very similar to that. So maybe our two countries have the same issues.
There's already like a percentage taken away because my country is full of casual people who mostly care about
Same.
the very
Same,
basic
yeah.
IP. But again, not to say that in itself as a denigration, it's just a
Sure,
matter
sure,
of how
sure.
the facts are. So
No.
already a fan base for something like this is little to begin with.
I'm-
In this
sorry.
particular case, yes, they mostly just care about what the deal in general tends to be, and tends to sometimes look at it. The reason why I tend to do it, and even you have people have seen it over the passing years, because at first I myself wasn't particularly caring about stuff like these. It's only a matter of when you see things from like the bigger picture, or start to actually caring about how a product is made, or what's the thought behind it, and the care put in, and what the care behind the franchise itself is, that things start potentially falling apart.
No.
For me, it's still the fact that I kind of like in the middle. I still enjoy the game. I really enjoy the gameplay, but I can't deny that these problems are a thing. Simply
Not
put.
only that, think about this from the perspective of the fans. Waiting 8 years, legit 8 years for a new game. I mean, can
if
you
wanted
blame?
a new game.
Well, yeah, Dwibs, there was definitely demand for a new game, especially with how free blatant.
Really, I'd have
left
thought.
a sequel.
I'd have thought the ending of the third game would have people reacting like, "No, why is there a sequel?"
That's the thing.
Well, Dwibs,
a
Dwibs.
lot of people actually,
That's how I reacted, actually.
Yeah, to remember that a lot of people actually liked the ending of 3.
I did.
So,
Yeah, that too. Okay, Dwibs, also Dwibs.
They
here's the
are.
thing.
I've guessed Pedro's reaction.
No, but no, it's because, see, here's the thing, Dwebs. To me, if something comes to a conclusion, I say just let it conclude. And yes, I understand Taylor's point that there's always room for expansion, but at the same time, sometimes it's best to just let something conclude and not poke the bear, as this game demonstrates. But go ahead.
To raise a few counterpoints, one, there was still that blatant sequel hook at the end of 3, though, so it was kind of clear that it wasn't dead, though. Like, despite 3 having a perfectly fine end, when you add in a sequel hook like that, people kind of expect it to be followed up on. Like, now, if they had just made 3 without that stupid sequel hook, we'd have been fine. Also,
like,
too...
You know what's ironic, Jova? Jack
Yeah.
and Daxter technically has a more conclusive ending to 3 than this franchise. And
Yeah.
yet we still managed to continue that.
I thought you were going to say that they technically have a more conclusive ending thanks to the racing game, because that one...
Okay. To be honest, I haven't played it X myself yet, but I'm planning to do it at some point.
Wait,
Anyway,
There you go.
wait, there's
There's
actually a
your
racing
conclusion,
game.
Shira. But
Jack X.
Sorry, yes, Tio?
But yeah, Shira, that was your conclusion. I hope
Oh.
you were satisfied.
No, I wasn't. Can I get a
There you
refund?
I didn't even know that was the conclusion.
You're not getting even a chocolate chip Sunday, sorry.
That's how lame it is, Twibs. Not
Wow.
even used to be.
Thankfully, I argue we're out of the worst part of the chapter, so at the very least, we're at least on a middle ground here, because now it's time for Bentley to stake out the Grizz and see what his entire deal is inside the caves.
I can agree with that. That said, though, point number 2 also, who's to say we can't have a sequel that just continues, but lets the particular characters who did have their happy ending have that happy ending? Here's, again, it's like I said, this game does a lot of what I didn't like from Ace Attorney 4, screwing with the happy endings of the characters. Like, continue their journeys, but let them retain what they gained from over the time. But no, this one gets rid of Sly and Carmen's relationship, just so that we can be back to the old status quo. Does some pretty stupid stuff with Bentley, which I won't spoil, and again, pretends like Murray didn't have his character development and kind of forgot that Murray is supposed to be
Okay.
the heart of the group.
Okay,
I'm trying to come off a...
Okay, if it's just a personal opinion, but I didn't really like that they got together at the end anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
for people who did like it, though, this is a major slap in the face. And again, if you didn't like that they got together, then you'll probably still be annoyed by the fact that the plot acts like Carmelita is the one in the right, because it never addresses the fact that she lied. It's
Yeah.
just that Sly lied.
Speaking of Ace Attorney 4, the gimmick of this particular mission is the fact that Bentley has to use an improved binocular combat as thermal sensors in order to find the correct track to follow in order to track down the Grizz.
Simply as an Ace Attorney, that would be a game I'd want to see.
I will say this, though. This game is not the worst thing ever. Like, if this had just been, a bump in the road and we'd gotten a sequel that fixed things, I think people would be a lot more lenient on this game. But no, apparently it screwed the pooch enough for it to be the last Sly game, so that is why it does have that stigma here. Like, whenever you're the last game, it's pretty much implied that unless that was a conclusive end, you more or less killed the franchise because people didn't like you as much, which is what happened with this game.
Oh, I was going to say blush.
Also, continue from the point that Jova mentioned in the previous part. I don't think Fred Tatashore, as we noticed for stuff like Gears, it's a fine voice actor, and I don't think he does a completely terrible job here. It's just a matter of the voice direction that he chose for the character. So, what do you actually think, Jova, for yourself, mind you?
I'll admit, Grizz may not be as bad as I remember him. He does have some funny lines here, and he's not the worst villain in this game. It's just that, and you know what? Look, we've had plenty of cases where white men do voice black guys here. So, this was before that era where...
Again, I can genuinely believe this is a case of they didn't think this through.
Were you okay,
Yeah.
Jova? Sorry.
I do feel a bit... Okay, yeah, I get it. Rapper and all that. I don't want to say it makes me feel bad. It kind of makes me feel a bit uncomfortable at times, especially given some of the more ghetto jokes here and there. Again, I don't think it was meant in malice. It's just that, well, even something that's not meant in malice can be hurtful sometimes. And look, I'm not one of those people who goes like, oh, no, we can laugh at nothing or it's overly sensitive. but I really do feel like it might have been better if they just hired a black actor for this.
Like
I
David Doyle
mean-
probably would have been just fine for this.
It's one of those things where it's one of those
Snap,
things.
you killed Bentley.
I feel
Your
like
bombs can actually one-shot you if you're not careful.
maybe this is just me, but I feel like okay. Let me put it this way, Joba. Let me ask you a question. Were you okay with Naveen in Princess in the Fall being voiced by a Brazilian white guy?
Well, yeah, I mean, for all I know, Naveen is Brazilian because we never really figure out what the guy's nationality is.
But the actor is
He's
still
from
white.
a kingdom or whatnot, and he's a prince. But
Okay,
yeah,
sure,
I'm
but
fine with that.
the actor is still white, but that's fine, right? Okay. I feel like the voice, like for example, to give an opposite example, Samurai Jack is an Asian. Is he Japanese too? I don't know which nationality it is.
Yeah, so this is like one of the primary cases, of at least
Yeah.
at the very least Asian ethnicity.
He's an Asian guy voiced by an American black guy, Phil Lamar. So it's so I feel like the most important thing when it comes to the voice casting is the voice necessarily, not necessarily maybe the ethnicity of the actor himself. Because as long as the voice works, maybe that's fine.
Okay,
It's also about the actual script that they're given to work with.
Okay. If I may, I'm gonna give a weird example, but it makes sense in context. Troy Baker is Autobot Jazz. Now I know what you may be thinking. Jova, Jazz is technically not a human. He doesn't have race. That's the thing. Jazz is a guy traditionally often played by a black guy. Obviously with this or that here and there. Troy Baker, I will give him credit, does seem to put on an authentic black man's voice with Jazz in Fall of Cybertron. And I don't feel uncomfortable with that. Look, I feel like it only really becomes a bit iffy when you overdo the stereotype and you're not the race of that particular person you're in there. Heck, even if it is tongue-in-cheek, sometimes it can work. As always, it varies with context here. And again, as I've gone on, I don't think the writers of this game really thought stuff through, so this is one of those cases where, yeah, I get that there's no ill intent, but I'm a bit uncomfortable with this.
Hey, Jova?
Yes, you're right?
Since this is something I've actually heard a few times recently, would you say, video games, the particular entertainment medium, would you say they're the worst at flanderizing black characters?
I mean,
okay. I know I'm speaking as a white guy, but didn't people, in terms of, I think films are a bit worse with that.
Okay. I'm just gonna say this. They both have their own issues here and there. It's hard to gauge which is really better or worse here and there. Both have made efforts to get better. Both still have their problems.
I mean, I can tell you that I can look. Let me give an example that actually applies to me. All over in a lot of American cartoons, whenever they want to do Portuguese characters, they get Brazilians to do the voices. Personally, I'm not bothered by it. I just find it funny. I'm not personally offended by it because who cares? It's a cartoon. I don't see. I actually. Normally, I would say do not attribute to malice what can be attributed to stupidity, but I don't think it's even stupidity. I think it's more so the fact that they did what was more convenient for them. It's much easier for them to get Brazilians and Portuguese people. Like I said, personally, I don't really care. But go on.
Yeah, like I said, there's always a spectrum with these sort of things. Normally, I'm not too annoyed by it. Granted, I do acknowledge that it can be a bit of a problem where, people of that actual race don't get a chance in the industry as much. And you know what? For all the problems I have, for all the problems I do have with shows like Family Guy or The Simpsons, I actually do kind of like that they have been going out of their ways to give, people of the races of certain characters more of a chance to act. Look, if we didn't have this problem where minorities already have as hard a time as it is to get into the industry, we wouldn't have to be doing this as much, but you sort of get why we do it like that. Just to make it clear, just because a white guy is playing a black guy or whatever person of race is playing a different race, that is not automatically a bad thing for me. Hell, Phil Lamar, the voice of Samurai Jack, I'd argue gives a pretty good, authentic
Okay,
Japanese accent for the character.
let me explain this mission briefly. It is actually pretty simple. This is, drilling through ice, and you need to place 3 different trackers on these very fancy pants while he's turning and he's not seeing you.
Now, as to the character itself, like I said, it depends on how much you can really stand his gimmick of being a gangsta
Yo.
counterfeit
It doesn't
artist
really
or
help
whatnot.
about being if they chose a race of grizzly that specifically has black fur.
And I get it. I'll admit, this part of the game is not necessarily bad, but
Even with that, Jova, put it very simply, the previous trilogy kind of never had something like that.
it really didn't.
For some reason, Peter McCollum give us like the little puzzle
Okay.
thing in the background.
Before I ask this question, then. Okay, Jova. Okay, if it's an entire people, like an entire country not being represented, would you say it's just as bad, or maybe it's different than something like a race, necessarily?
It all depends on circumstances. Like, if it's a race of people and you're misrepresenting them, I'd say good old classic Peter Pan and Disney. That's bad.
Oh,
That's
sure.
really bad.
Oh, I understand that. What I mean is that something like, it's a bad thing when, things get married. Okay, but if it's a country, if it's Portuguese people being misrepresented, like the whole Brazilian example that I mentioned, would you say that's, how bad is that on the spectrum? I'm curious. Sorry, cutscene.
I think it depends on the context. If, the point is of something that is, not necessarily that crucial to them, so that it doesn't end up coming off as insulting, then sure, fine. And if the people who are voicing them or portraying them can give off enough of an authentic stuff that, people of that race are okay with, then sure, fine, by all means.
It tends to be because how much of an issue it is really depends on what is happening, like Jova said. From what I've seen, it tends to be mostly an issue if the story is tied to the character's race specifically. And
Okay.
Pretty much.
Alright.
Let me put it like this: if you had a story in Africa where everyone lives in a grass hut in the middle of the 21st century, like North did.
Oh, no. That's like...
Page or what Frank Miller themes of people from the Middle East.
Well, let me put it this way. Like, there's an episode in Family Guy with 2 Brazilian people who are working for Peter on this boat, and he literally says, "Oh, are you kidding, Lois? They're Portuguese. Work is their cocaine."
Well, from what you told me, that is true.
Well, yeah. I know. Like I said, Joe, there is a reason for the stereotype, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a stereotype, I guess.
Okay. Like I said, stereotypes are not inherently a bad thing. Like, they can be funny, and they can be used well. The point, it's about how you use those stereotypes and to what length you do in that regard. Like, simply having a stereotype, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because unfortunately, there are some cases where stereotypes are essentially elongated versions of the truth, essentially. Obviously warped in everything, but there is some hint of truth in them.
I can tell you that the worst reaction I've heard / seen when it comes to that particular episode of Family Guy is, that's it. Like, people don't really get pissed off about it, at least that I've seen over here.
The Brazilian Portuguese thing, that kind of seems like writers do that on purpose a lot of the time.
Honestly,
not all the time, but
like
a lot
I
of the
said,
time.
it's all about context and the situation. The situation you're describing does not sound like, something that would get people to jump up and scream racist. Now, say somebody doing blackface, well,
that's obvious.
The opposite end of the spectrum.
Anyway, before we go, Tia, you mentioned Jack X Combat Racing. Isn't just how sometimes when they change names for regions, they just change it or they make the name longer.
Well, like Jack 2, for example, in our country is called Renegade.
Well, around here, they actually shortened the name. Jack X Combat Racing in the States here is just called Jack X.
Yeah.
because I guess
Huh.
I
That kind
guess
of
I guess
Well,
there's
it's
no
all
combat
over-
racing in
It's all over the
in our
place,
version.
Jova. Again, even the Ratchet and Clank titles kind of suffer from that, but for different reasons. But we can save that when we get actually to those games. For the time being, next time we actually disrupt the operation of the Grizz. So stay with a couple of surprises actually. So stay tuned for that.
See ya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you then.